start with you. This isn't a surprise if it's true, is it? I don't mean to be cynical. I mean, I shouldn't perhaps do it like this, but I'm quite surprised he's lasted as long as he has.
Right, and actually what was most remarkable is sort of after the aftermath of this mutiny, he was tooling about Africa, glad-handing, you know, African leaders like he was the new Putin. And I thought to myself, mate, you know, you've got yourself into hot water already. You're getting yourself into hotter water. What does this lead to, I think, is what we need to be looking at, because he was basically Putin's patsy. He did what Putin needed him to do. He did what the Chinese needed them to do, defending assets across places like Africa where they've got mineral resources and so on and so forth, actually beginning to manipulate populations to turn against previous Western allies and look more towards what China and Russia can do. There's a great race going on right now in Africa because Africa is basically the larder of some of the greatest world's resources, and Russia and China are winning it hands down. Now, a lot of that has been orchestrated for a number of years now by Wagner mercenaries. Him gone, well, he overstood his station. What comes next? That's the question we need to ask.
When all of this happened, Frankie, and I'm not an expert at all, I think, apart from everybody was like, good Lord, and then he stopped halfway to Moscow and turned around and up in Belarus, a lot of people were saying, actually, Putin is a revolting human being. But this guy's even worse, if that's at all possible. And people were frightened in terms of internationally and globally what might happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Jekyll and Hyde, I definitely feel like, you know, the Wagner Group is the even darker side of Putin, if that even exists. And Alex is absolutely right. I mean, they were for such a long time the doers of Russia's dirty work, which then became, you know, the globalized dirty work, as far as I'm concerned. You're absolutely right. The impacts that this will have in somewhere like Africa, where you've already got so many unstable either conflicts or regions all tied in around minerals, like the DRC, for example, all of those mines which are either ran by African militias supported by the Wagner Group or at least overseen by the Wagner Group. Like, we cannot overstate like the delicacy around this situation. And without this leader, who will replace him? And then also, what does this mean for Putin and his allies? Because I think Belarus, for example, if he was in hiding there, that even by itself suggests that Belarus and Russia perhaps are on slightly rocky ground. So what does this mean then for Russia and its ties to all of these other countries in Africa? Will they turn their backs on them and go with the Wagner Group and leave Russia alone to be a pariah state? I mean, it really is a massive story.
This just in, by the way, we're getting information all the time. Breaking news and talk. More evidence the plane is indeed Prigozhin's. In a video on social media, we don't have that. The last 4 digits of a registration number on the engine debris are seen, 2795. Prigozhin's plane is registered as RA02795. 8 bodies have been found at the crash site. That's according to the Russian state news agency RIA Novosti. Joe, I mean, is it a classic story of Putin with his dirty little sordid army doing his business, as you quite rightly say, in Africa? I mean, we've always seen Putin as this incredibly strong man who's got an iron grip on Russia. Even if this guy has died today, hardly surprising, I would imagine. Does this tell us more about the state of Putin's rule? Does it mean that he should be looking over his shoulder, do you think?
Potentially, definitely. Well, potentially and definitely. But I think that with somebody like this, just because he's been replaced or just because he's gone doesn't mean that it's not necessarily going to be replaced by somebody else. I think that the ties that the Wagner Group have got in places like Niger are so deep-rooted that it really doesn't matter who their leader is. And it really doesn't matter, you know, who it is that's kind of calling the shots in that sense. And I think that Putin, aside from the Wagner Group, has really clear ties with Africans to begin with. So I think that, you know, it doesn't really make any difference whether it's the Wagner Group. Even if the Wagner Group right now was to disassemble, they wouldn't be able to necessarily, we wouldn't necessarily be able to assure that Putin wouldn't be right there and have their soldiers